Rep Govan, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing fine. Just excited about this being the holiday, Thanksgiving time of year that families come together, and considering what we've been through as a result of COVID, it's a good time for families to try to reconnect and reestablish with one another after such a tragedy.
Okay. Do you have any big plans for this holiday season, or are you just going to
Well,
stay around the house?
Well, actually, you see me dressed all comfortable, uh, headed with my grandkids to take my promise, Papa to promise to take them to the movies. And our family in town, we all vaxxed up. And so we're going to take the kids to the movies before it gets crowded. We can practice some social distancing when you get in early in the afternoon and not going in the evening. So we're going to try to enjoy a family activity and then get back home to smell some of that good cooking that's being worked on.
Well, happy holidays to you and to the family. And thank you for taking time out your holiday schedule to talk with us today. But holiday aside, we have some serious issues right now in South Carolina. We're just going through reapportionment. Wanted to talk to you as a legislator, wanted to talk to you a little bit about the process and what do you see that's happening with this process this year?
Well, a lot of things are going on this year. First of all, I think first and foremost is that we're dealing with a redistricting process that is actually taking place in the middle of a pandemic. And as a result of that, we are indeed having some challenges. Um, and as a result of that, because of the pandemic, we're going to have to deal with redistricting in South Carolina as across the rest of the country with a serious undercount in terms of the population. So it's some question in terms of whether we are truly doing this and counting and making every person's vote count and everybody having access to their government and being on a level playing field.
When you explain a little bit when you talk about undercount, what is the concern with the count?
Well, one of the things that we're all concerned about, and I apologize for the background noise, they're doing some reconstruction while we're out of session here. So if you're having problems hearing me, just tell me to pick up. But one of the problems that we're having is that, of course, every 10 years, we conduct a census in this country to determine the population. And of course, members of the House and of the Senate, in terms of the United States Congress, the Congress or the House of Representatives is they're subdivided based on each member representing the same amount of population. And this process also occurs on the state level with the state legislature in terms of the state house or the state senate. And the problem this year has been that there's been a serious undercount as a result of the pandemic because the Census Bureau was not able to go out and do what it usually does this cycle because of the pandemic. Usually you have door-to-door activity for verification purposes of people being where they say they are. Instead, a lot of that process took place online. And with the fact that you have serious areas of this country where you have serious problems with internet or internet connection, access to Wi-Fi, and those kinds of things, we don't think we know that a lot of people were missed in the count. So in some areas of the country, you're going to have an undercount in terms of the population. And as a result, since this is tied to the census and the numbers tied to goods and services that are received at the state and local level, a lot of people are going to be missed out and underrepresented.
Mm-hmm. Well, you represent a rural area in South Carolina, and we know at South Carolinians, we know that a lot of our rural areas suffer from lack of broadband services or their speed. So is it plausible to say that rural South Carolina may have been affected by this undercount?
Without question, rural South Carolina has been affected. And what we need to do is, unfortunately, but it wasn't done. The Census Bureau could have made some adjustments, but as you recall, under the previous administration, the Trump administration didn't allow this to happen. And so we're going forward now with these numbers that we know are skewed. And we're going forward with that, and some people are going to be left out.
Okay. What are legislator or what are other organizations doing to raise awareness of this undercount? What's going on? How are we fighting back against this injustice?
Well, fortunately for us, there are organizations such as the NAACP that have been doing a yeoman's job in terms of trying to address this, not only here in South Carolina, but I understand nationally, have raised these kinds of issues. The question, though, Michael, is in terms of whether these local state legislatures are going to hear or listen to the arguments and make the adjustments because right now, as far as what we see in South Carolina,
Mhm.
that definitely is not happening. We see the ramifications of that in terms of the collapsing, or in certain cases like mine, the cracking of former minority districts which have lost population, but may not have lost as much as they allegedly have based on the census count. And as a result, you're going to see it have a tremendous impact in terms of the various areas across the state, particularly in the rural areas and in minority black and brown communities across the state, where access to broadband may have been limited, and where
Mhm.
people tend to look for a more direct form of communication in terms of filling out the census data or information that's required and getting that back in.
Now, throughout your years in the state legislature, you've worked on some of these committees before. What would you have done if you were on that committee this year?
Well, first and foremost, I think the law does allow, based on redistricting, does allow for you to have a deviation or to deviate from having exact numbers or proportional
Mhm.
representation. You have a percentage, and I think several of us, and myself included, have argued that the state needs to look at least a 5% allowance or deviation, which would kind of make sure that we had some give and take into account any undercount that we had in the state. And you can go up as high as 10%. But our state is sticking to a strict 2.5% deviation. And as a
Mhm.
result of that, I think it just it leaves people out. And that's not what this process is supposed to be about. It's supposed to be inclusion and ensure that there's not taxation without adequate representation. And for black and brown and rural communities, we're going to be hurting
Mhm.
because we're going to be underrepresented in the General Assembly, and our communities of interest are not going to be articulated by those concentrations of voters.
Rep Govan, before I let you go, wanted to know we hear the term majority minority district. Can you please explain to people what that is and what that means and why that's important?
Well, one of the ruses that are being used to justify not increasing or going to a 5% deviation is that the House Judiciary Committee and the Redistricting Committee basically are arguing that they have created or increased the number of majority and minority districts in the state
Mhm.
by increasing the BVAPs to those districts based on the maps that they've designed to over 50%. And this is misleading because what they have actually done is they have practiced gerrymandering a lot of districts and cracking of districts such as mine in Orangeburg County. But they've done the same in Richland County, Greenville. There's districts in the PD, etc., that have been cracked and gerrymandered, and the net result is you're going to find a retrogression or regressing of the number of minority representatives in both the South Carolina House and the state Senate. And I think that in the long run, this has negative ramifications, not only for Black and brown communities, but for rural communities, regardless of whether you're Black, white, or Democrat or Republican. In my area, for example, like Orangeburg, it's going to reduce the resident representatives for an area that should have at least two resident representatives, and basically cut that down to one. We're going to lose a Senate seat as well. And in addition to that, the community of interest, and I'll use my district as an example, will be lost. A district that has been in existence for nearly 50 years and was a part of the original remap because of, again, the communities of interest. We also see a large number of split precincts that are occurring, the gerrymandering of lines, the destruction of communities of interest. And so it's going to be very hard to make up that ground, because
Right.
something that's been put in place built up over the last 50 years, and we're going to regress as opposed to progress. And it'll be 10 years from now before we can do anything about it. So I think it's that we need to really focus on, get serious about. And I think we need to hear back from the community. Again, regardless of whether you're Black or white, if you live in a rural community, you don't want your interests to be dominated by an urban community. Because the communities of interest are different. So I think we all need to look at this map. We need to look at what's in the best interest of all South Carolinians, to be sure all voices are heard, and that they don't dispatch anyone or those communities of interest, because that's the whole purpose of this redistricting process, to be sure all voices are heard, regardless of race, creed, color, and also in terms of the way of life that people choose to live in terms of as communities. Every aspect and every facet of the community needs to be heard to make good public policy, and that's what the concern here is. It's not about. It seems to be now more about power and retaining power as opposed to be about people. And I think that's something that, as South Carolinians, regardless of where you stand politically, that we all need to be concerned about.
And is it my understanding that with the new map, with the map that the House is proposing, that Orangeburg will not be represented? Orangeburg won't have a representative that lives within Orangeburg. Is that correct? Or they'll have one within the
There
city?
will have no representative that lives within the city limits of Orangeburg or within Orangeburg County, but one person, and based on its population of 84,000 plus people, it should have at least two resident representatives. We're people even in the counties that will be pulled into Orangeburg and are dividing it up don't even agree with the plan. Bamberg County has serious problems with it. Other counties involved. Orangeburg will be dominated by representation basically from Bamberg, Barnwell, Calhoun County, and only have one person. And, oddly enough, I'm the only native Orangeburgian that serves on the delegation. So, I'll be put in a district and have to compete with someone from Calhoun County.
Well, Rep. Govan, thank you for taking time to sit down with us today and supplying us with this information. I look forward to having you back and let us know what we can do. It is our job here at the Minority Eye. We're going to get the word out about redistricting and what's going on, so the community will have a better understanding, so we can see what we can do to reverse some of this harmful gerrymandering. And once again, I just want to thank you for taking the time out, and I will definitely wish the family well and happy holidays.
Thank you so much. The deadline, we're going to take this up, by the way, on December the 1st. They are rushing this or fast tracking it through. We thought we were coming back on the 6th. Now it's the 1st, and this will be one and done by December the 6th. So we're asking you to contact the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, the Redistricting Committee, and the Speaker of the House, and tell them that you oppose or in opposition to the redistricting plan as proposed by the South Carolina House of Representatives, and that you support changes in that plan, including the Govan amendment that will fix the situation in my area, but there are other amendments in other areas that need to be fixed as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, and you have a great Thanksgiving holiday.